Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. We're going to talk about Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons and how they're going to be looking to monetize their player base even further. We've been following the story with the changes coming to D&D for the last couple of weeks now. In fact, we just did a video yesterday. There was an interview with the president of Wizards of the Coast, a woman who came from Microsoft, from Xbox, talking about how they want to kind of gamify. Well, it is a tabletop game, but they want to, add more online game type elements, aka microtransactions and upcharges and pay to win. I think schemes possibly to D&D. They're trying to get the most amount of money out of their players that they can get. And now they just talked about the open game license with One D&D that, yeah, you'll be able to create fan works, but if you make too much money, Wizards takes a cut. So we're gonna talk about this because there are some people that have done some pretty notable crowdfunders who have sold their own variations of D20 system or whatever that were making bank, and Wizards wants a piece of that. They want a piece of it, just like Nintendo. Remember when Nintendo was going to let you stream their games, but they wanted like half the money you made? It's kind of what this reminds me of. I mean, at this point, I don't understand why Wizards just doesn't flat out tell people to go play Pathfinder or go play something else. But we're going to talk about these changes. A lot of people not real happy about this, and I understand why they're not real happy about it. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, over 283, almost 284,000 subs. Thank you for the support. We do talk about tabletop gaming. Sometimes it's part of the bigger conversation around nerd culture and all the weird decisions being made around nerd culture, whether or not it's political or whether or not it's corporate. And in this case, with Wizards, the answer is yes. They've been caving to Twitter pressure, Tumblr pressure to make changes to their games, dropping race from the game. Orcs are racist. There's problematic language, yada, yada, yada. And at the same time, they're scheming more and more ways to make money out of their existing player base. And a lot of this, again, it's like corporate mentality. Hasbro needs money, right? Hasbro needs more money. They're not satisfied with the answer being a lot of people played D&D and Magic the Gathering during the pandemic, and it was kind of a one-off and things are going to normalize. No. If you made $200 million last year, you damn well better make $220 million this year or you're failing. And I get the vibe that the president of Wizards is under a lot of pressure. The mainstream media has actually been throwing Wizards of the Coast under the wheels of the bus, blaming them for Hasbro's stock decline, saying that they're overprinting their Magic cards, trying to bleed players dry. And this is potentially another example of this. Now, you have to make ridiculous money to have to give them a cut for now. But they're introducing royalties to D&D. This is another way that they're going to attempt to monetize their audience. Now, I do understand to some degree if you are making bank off of their IP or their game system or whatever, their rule set, there probably should be something in it for them. But I think it's going to start with the bigger players, the bigger campaigns, and then I think it's going to work its way down. If you make over $50,000, and a lot of people make over $50,000 in crowdfunding or selling digital downloads or whatever, you have to tell Wizards that you're making money. Basically, you get to be their R&D department. So this is coming from Dicebreaker. Dicebreaker.com. One D&D's open gaming license will introduce royalties for the biggest creators and prevent third-party NFTs. Well, the NFT thing, I think I agree with. If you make more than $750,000 a year selling D&D creations, Wizards of the Coast wants a piece of that. D&D creators attempted to clarify the future of the popular tabletop RPG by explaining how One D&D will change the way independent creators make and sell D&D related products. This is probably all ties into, basically turning, D&D Beyond into like an app store or something, A December 21st blog post on D&D Beyond says the company and designers working on the next iteration, codenamed One D&D, have heard the discussions concerning the open gaming license and accompanying system reference document. When combined, the pair form the legal framework and specific rules that allows third-party adventures, supplements, and other tabletop content to be created and sold on platforms such as DriveThruRPG and Roll20. The DM's Guild is a unique exception. Publisher Wizards of the Coast plans to keep the OGL around, though version 1.1 will better fit the current reality of Dungeons & Dragons as a multimedia brand that extends beyond the tabletop, as well as addressing just how financially successful select few third-party companies have become. So the OGL, as I recall, and they might explain it better, but as I recall, was what if you could make changes to version 3.5, I believe, and you didn't have to pay them anything. You just had to acknowledge that you were free to use it. And I think a lot of the quote-unquote homebrew systems are actually using the D&D rules, the D20 rules. And, if you've sold a version of that or sold modules, I know some actual like former TSR creators have sold adventures, campaign worlds, modules that you can use with 5e, and they've made ridiculous money on Kickstarter or whatever. They could be looking at having to pay Wizards of the Coast. This isn't a very good deal. The OGL needs an update to ensure that it keeps doing what it was intended to do. Allow the D&D community's independent creators to build and play and grow the game we all love without allowing things like third parties to mint D&D NFTs and large businesses to exploit our IP, the blog post reads. Now, again, remember, I do agree to an extent, but let's remember that the woman in charge of Wizards now, if you go back and watch that video, read that interview, I think it was on Geek Native. If you read that interview, she is very corporate. She is speaking in corporatese. She does not sound like someone who's actually played D&D, someone who's actually come up through the ranks and, played in the basement with her friends. She sounds like she's just a bean counter from Microsoft, from Xbox, who wants to monetize every individual account as much as possible. And they're probably looking at this like, hey, this person's making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year selling bootleg D&D stuff. We got to get a cut of that, right? All existing creations meant to be used with D&D 5e will remain compatible with 1D&D and whatever OGL drops alongside it. Wizards explicitly stated that creators will not need to rewrite or republish their old material to fit the new model. Creators should also continue to refer to the existing SRD as its replacement is being developed alongside 1D&D via ongoing public playtesting. OGL version 1.1 will clarify that it's only meant to cover tabletop material, adventures, supplements, source books, etc. that are printed or published as electronic documents such as EPUBs or PDFs. Video games, merchandise, books, and films won't be covered, which makes sense given Wizards and parent company Hasbro are hard at work monetizing D&D along those vectors and beyond. They're talking about the expansion or the movie Honor Among Thieves. The blog post states very little will change for those creators who publish free material, but commercial creations will be subject to a new royalty system. Anyone selling their work will need to agree to the new license, report OGL-related revenue annually if you make more than $50,000 and publish a specific creator badge on their products, likely similar to programs such as the Morkberg third-party agreement. Actual royalties won't kick in until 2024, and only when a creator or business revenue cracks the $750,000 ceiling. So it could be in total, right? We're not talking just one product. It could be like my business made more than $750,000 this year selling supplements through DriveThruRPG. Now Wizards wants a cut. Wizards claims less than 20 entities will be affected, but you can bet Critical Role's fast expanding media empire is among them. Along with longtime D&D publisher Kobold Press. The latter relies heavily on freelance writers and illustrators, and it's unclear how heavy the royalties will be and whether it will affect customer prices or freelance pay. Dicebreaker has reached out for more information. This vision of an updated OGL paves a path for Wizards of the Coast to muscle in on ultra-successful crowdfunding projects without crushing existing communities, which the blog post says are a critical part of the D&D experience. It also said existing virtual tabletop agreements will not be affected by whatever shape the OGL takes, even though the company has announced their own version to launch close to 1D&D's release in 2024. This is not going to go well. This is not going to go well. And this is pretty accurate. This is Grum's right? Grums. Good rundown of Wizards' response to their modifications of the OGL. The requirement that everyone report their revenue from D&D products to Wizards is pretty shit. So the royalties, WotC wants to be like Google's App Store. Let's check this out. This guy worked on World of Warcraft, right? So here we go. Wizards has released its statement on the future of the open game license for D&D, and it's a doozy. No, not at all. Videos and video games are no longer covered under the OGL. So does that mean they're going to stop Critical Role from doing live gaming? In theory, WotC is asserting that its copyright can block actual plays of its games, just as Nintendo has asserted. I said the Nintendo parallel is uncanny. That's a big deal. It also puts at risk a lot of indie games. The OGL will no longer actually an open license. It's no longer an open license for commercial purposes. It will now require you report revenue to WotC, and you have to pay royalties on revenues above $750,000. The amount of royalties isn't stated. Now you have to report your revenue to WotC because what they're going to do, you're basically going to do beta testing for them. You're basically going to put products out there, and if your product even makes $500,000, they're going to probably look at it and be like, thanks for that idea. That's a great idea. We're going to do it now. Bye. And they'll totally cut you out of it. Not all hope is lost. Despite its bold assertions in the article, WotC doesn't have hold as much power as it claims. To understand why, let's turn to intellectual property and tabletop games. So here we go. This gets into the nitty gritty of it. The author notes in the article that games rules cannot be copyrighted. This is literally U.S. law. The law professors specifically consider the D&D D20 system and find it uncopyrightable. They also find that Hasbro has failed to patent it. Well, Hasbro also failed to file for the TSR trademark. And that's a whole nother cluster F you can Google about new TSR. That's a whole nother thing. They then note that even if it were copyrighted, it has been made open by a copyleft agreement, the open game license. Dr. Tarantino points out that the intent of the OGL was to create a free software foundation style license similar to GNU. Dancy makes it clear that this was intended to be a truly open license that would spur improvements in the rules. In fact, he goes on and on about this. I thought the OGL was non-revocable and they couldn't do this. In my opinion, they cannot revoke the existing OGL. What they can do is promulgate a new OGL and put all their new content under the new OGL. Whether they will attempt to litigate against people using the old OGL with old content remains to be seen. Look, this is all about desperation. This is absolute desperation. And again, I fully blame the people from Microsoft that they brought in to run Wizards of the Coast. Especially the woman in charge now. She is, if you read that interview, she is not a tabletop gamer. She sounds like she really doesn't even fully understand the product, just that her goal is to monetize every individual player, every instance of anything, even D&D related or tangent, adjacent, D&D adjacent, needs to be monetized because Hasbro's bottom line. They're getting a lot of crap right now publicly because their stock is dropping because of Magic the Gathering. And again, this is the corporate mindset. You always have to do better. And they're looking at their sales. And they're like, oh, the sales are declining after the pandemic, because of course they are, because people were locked in their houses, right? And they're also looking at like, well, once people buy one set of rules or rule books, they really don't need to buy anymore. So where else are we going to be able to monetize? And they have made several statements to this effect just in the last month or two, that their goal wasn't to make players happy. It wasn't to make a better game system. Their goal was to monetize everybody more effectively, right? They're going to juice you guys. And if you even create your own homebrew stuff, they're going to juice you. It's absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, yeah, again, thanks Alexander Macris for posting that. This is kind of bullshit. I don't think it's going to go well. I don't think it's going to go well at all. We'll see what happens. I mean, most people are not going to be affected, obviously, but again, this just seems to me like a great advertisement for alternatives for Pathfinder. They might benefit tremendously from this. So we'll see what happens. Gonna wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.